back in the 50s, after World War II, as people were seeking a very prosperous place, and Venezuela was the fourth richest country in the planet. So Venezuela received people from all over Europe, from Latin America, from the Middle East, even people from the United States came to Venezuela and lived there. And Venezuela was truly the American dream in South America. And but those things changed gradually, and so the life that my grandparents and my parents lived when they were younger was very much different by the time I was born, because I was born on the same year that Hugo Chavez took office. And Chavez changed the country, right? Venezuela was already not the fourth richest country in the planet by the 90s when he got elected, but Venezuela was an average Latin America, was an average country, freedom-wise, was much richer than the rest of Latin America, and it was a good place to live, with problems, with crime, with corruption, like every Latin American country, but where people weren't starving to death and where poor people had a chance to make it at life. And those things changed when Chavez took over businesses, when Chavez spent so much money on welfare programs that made our currency worthless by printing money, that I couldn't even fit enough cash in my wallet to buy things. How he regulated businesses with price controls and currency controls that created shortages of everything you can imagine, making us line up for hours, rationing food. It made life impossible. It made what was a rich country, a normal country, into a hell. It is a textbook case of bad economic policy, of socialism, right? Because it is government takeover of the economy. If back in 2016, when I was in Venezuela, I sometimes didn't have water for 3 weeks. 3 weeks. We had to collect it from the rain.
Oh my God.
Like if we were living in the 1800s or worse than the 1800s. Electricity would go out every week randomly, and your fridge would go bust because those changes in current destroy your electrical equipment. So they have bigger costs than just not having electricity. You actually lose your devices.
So Venezuela has what, the largest oil reserves in the world, or second? Is that right?
The largest.
Okay, so you look at a place like Dubai and the UAE and Qatar, all filthy rich countries. Venezuela is now one of the poorest countries in the world. Walk us through the sort of dissension into chaos and hyperinflation. So Chavez takes over basically what it's like the Bill Clinton administration, and his acolyte Maduro is still in power. So that's almost my entire lifetime. That's older than you. Walk us through how it started. What did he promise the people? What did he run on?
Yeah, he ran on number one, redistribution of the wealth, of resources. He thought that oil resources weren't reaching the poor population, and that if he were in power, he would use the oil resources to pay money to the poor population, and give away things for free. He claimed that he would not take over businesses, which was a lie, and everybody knew it was a lie if you were a smart person. Why? Because he was friends with Fidel Castro, and you don't trust people who are friends with totalitarian regimes.
Right.
You don't trust people who support the same policies, and then they claim that they're not going to do the same, which is something that we see very often here in the United States too.
Would it be fair to say Chavez, I'm assuming he didn't run based on becoming the reincarnate of Fidel Castro. Would it be fair to say he ran as a social democrat?
Yes, in the first time. After that, not only the reincarnation of Fidel Castro, but he painted pictures of Fidel Castro all over the country, actually. And Fidel Castro came to Venezuela many, many, many times.
Under Chavez, I'm assuming the first few years, while he was making these changes, it wasn't severe economic collapse. At least for me, and you correct me if I'm wrong on your analysis, someone who's obviously brought up there and very knowledgeable about there, the sort of, we hear about the Maduro diet, and we can explain what that's about. That seems to be a phenomenon largely of the last few years, at least to the extent of its gravity as it is today, where like there's no food in a lot of places. When did that start to happen? Was it after the oil lost its value in sort of mid 2000s and sort of dropped to like $10 a barrel? Like what was the change?
Well, let me run about this. Chavez was lucky to enjoy that on the year he started in office, oil was actually at $10 a barrel in 1999. By 2006, 2007, it was at $100 a barrel. So government revenues from oil multiplied times 10. Right. Approximately, production changed, but government revenues increased drastically. Even those increased government revenues were not enough to finance all the spending that he decided to do. Yes, much of it was corruption, of course, because the government was in charge of everything. But much of it was building apartments for people for free, giving housing for free, not charging for electricity, not charging for water, not charging for gasoline in the gas station, not charging for food, giving food subsidized for free. And all of those things cost money.
Hmm.
And it was not enough. So, and nobody was going to give them money to pay for it, like through that, because investors didn't have confidence in the
Right.
ability to pay back.
Hmm.
So he just printed money. He also hired like 1 million new government workers in a country of back 25 million people.
Was it really a million?
Yes.
Oh my God.
The decline was gradual because now what happened 20 years ago looks gradual because of how horrible things are today.
Hmm.
It felt very strongly, and Americans would think it's hell, even the early times of Chavez.
Hmm.
By 2004, you couldn't find milk in the supermarkets.
Really?
You can find all New York Times articles that I've looked them up
Hmm.
from the early 2000s of shortages in Venezuela. Now, it's not like today. Today, there's nothing, right?
Hmm.
But things, you could already start things to change, things that don't happen in normal countries. Crime is the also unheard story of Venezuela, really. Venezuela is now one of the most dangerous countries in the world. It's not even a socialism story.
Hmm.
It's really Venezuela. Maybe it's the only socialist country that is also extremely dangerous.
Right, right. Because even in the Soviet Union, I mean, well, the government would kill you, but there wasn't.
But not regular crime.
Yeah, it wasn't right. Exactly, it wasn't so much regular crime.
It was politically targeted. In
Mhm,
Venezuela,
right.
it's not. In Venezuela,
You got the
there's
best
a
of
lot of
both worlds in
songs about
Venezuela.
this. There's a song, Por estas calles, in these streets, that is from the 90s. And that now it's revived because it's so true today. It's like, it doesn't matter your color, your race, your creed, everybody gets killed, something like that.
Hmm.
It's Venezuela, Caracas, the city where I live, the capital, is the city with the highest murder rate on the planet. It's over 100 people per 100,000. So that means that 1 out of every 1,000 persons
Hmm.
gets killed every year. It's the equivalent if we had, say, 300, 400,000 Americans die each year of homicide, which is like COVID deaths of homicide every single year. It's insane. It's killing the whole state of Wyoming every year proportionally.
Right, right.
That's how big the problem is, and that doesn't count starvation. That doesn't count lack of medicine. That doesn't count, people escaping and dying, because that's happening right now. People who escape by sea to Trinidad, to Aruba, border with Colombia. It is a country that was totally destroyed.
Mhm. And talk to us about the hyperinflation. What's the inflation figures like? Do you know at this moment, or roughly?
Talking
about
they have
thousands
gone
of
down.
percent?
Right now, they're thousands percent, but that's actually a lot less than it was 2 years ago when it reached millions.
Million
Uh,
percent inflation.
yeah, and according to the International Monetary Fund, at least, yes. But now it's a few thousand, and the reason is that the regime has made reforms in the past few years.
Hmm.
Now, thousands percent is still insane. It
It's
doesn't really
insane. I
matter.
mean, it's just
The,
like,
the
I mean,
difference
ten
for the
percent is
normal
insane.
folk,
Right. I
yeah,
mean,
10% is insane.
yeah.
So the United States, the highest inflation rate we've lived here was in the 70s, and it was 13% per year, which was the early years of Chavez. That was the lowest inflation we ever had, actually. So when I'm telling you that, when you say, well, things were not as bad during Chavez, things
Mhm.
during Chavez were horrible by the standards we had in the past.
Absolutely.
The thing is that things are so bad now that the bad in the past looks great.
Do you see any parallels between what the social democratic wing of politics wants to do here versus what Chavez and Maduro, etc., ran on there? Because we're always promised that what they want is Denmark or Norway, which is Norway's a petro-state as well, but they made very different choices, and smart choices. And Sweden, which has much more of a actually in a lot of ways are more capitalist than us. I think they even have lower corporate tax rates. They more free trade, less occupational licenses. Do you buy that? The Bernie Sanders in the world, who by the way used to in Illinois, they used to praise Maduro and people like Chavez, but now they're saying they want the Nordic model. What's your
Yeah.
take on that?
Well, the Nordic model, I wish that they proposed the Nordic model, because that would be a really good discussion to have over what works there and what doesn't. That would be a really meaningful and interesting debate, but it is not really the debate we're having. They are not proposing having a lower corporate tax or eliminating regulations or imposing a sales tax on everybody to finance the welfare state they want. No, they want to take everything from the rich and think that there's enough money there to pay all the things they want and increase taxes on businesses, which is not what happens in all these supposedly social democratic countries.
Hmm.
So no, they want what happens in Venezuela.